This is the Smart Poker Study Podcast for players who are always striving to be better today than they were yesterday. Through strategy discussions, Q&As, and Poker Pro interviews, we'll dive deep into everything related to poker tactics, study techniques, and the mental side of the game. All in an effort to improve your skills, maximize your profits, and to make you a lifelong successful player. This podcast is brought to you by SmartPokerStudy.com, and I'm your host, Sky Matsuhashi. Poker people, in case you missed yesterday's episode number 20, I reviewed the progress I'm making in my pursuit of poker goals for 2016. Hey poker people, I'm 15 days into my 30-day challenge to release a new podcast every single day. The halfway mark! You know what's funny? I'm not even done with this challenge yet, and I'm already planning my next one. I must be some kind of glutton for punishment. It's a good one. I'll announce it sometime later. Just be ready for that after I finish this one, of course. And a book report for today. I just finished Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. I hope you've read that, but if not, no spoiler report. I'm not going to give you any spoilers here. But I heard great things about it originally, but probably never would have bought it for myself, Then one day, it showed up in my loot crate, and holy cow, I am so glad it did. The future world that it depicts is pretty darn bleak, but the awesome virtual world within that book that everyone lives in is amazing. This old billionaire who created the most popular MMO ever, it's a kind of virtual utopia. He died and left his fortune to anyone who can solve 3 different puzzles. Well, the main character, called Wade, solves the first one many years after the challenge is issued, and this causes all sorts of chaos, as now he's the one that everyone's trying to follow and beat to the next puzzle, and some of his opponents are actually willing to kill for it, and they do end up killing within the novel, It ends up being a crazy, super thrilling story with cool characters and some really fun surprises. I read the whole thing in about a day and a half or so. I was just so into it, and if you're into 80s nostalgia, cool virtual action, a treasure hunt, and a great story, I totally recommend this one. I'm going to read Ernest Cline's next book called Armada next, and I actually have that one. I ordered it from Amazon. It's on the way here. Alrighty, on to the show. I've got a special one for you today. It's actually the first in an 11-part series. Today I'll discuss how to get the most from poker strategy books, and the next 10 parts are going to break down one particular book, each chapter of that one book. And I'll give you more details towards the end of the podcast on which book it is, so please stay tuned. For an overview of this episode, I'll begin by relating a story about the first time I read The Mental Game of Poker and how I got nothing out of it at all. It was just a waste of 3 hours reading that book. And then I'll go into the 7-step process I came up with to ensure that never happened to me again. I'll show you how to use each step to get the most out of every book you read, and I'll end the podcast with a challenge, and then I'll tell you which amazing book I'll cover in the next 10 podcast episodes and my plans for how I'm going to cover it. Plus, I created an awesome 7 steps to poker book learning one-sheet PDF that you can use when you read your next poker book. You can download this form from the show notes at smartpokerstudy.com/21. Now here it is, today's podcast mission. My mission for today. At the end of this podcast, you'll know how to get the most from every poker strategy book you read, and no longer will you finish a book, shelve it, and promptly forget everything you read. So, the first time I read Jared Tendler's epic book, The Mental Game of Poker, I got nothing out of it. Not a zero zilch, really. I didn't take action to improve my tilt, and it stayed exactly the same. Years later, as I was suffering once again from some butt-ugly tilt, I came across the book on my shelf, and I realized that I didn't remember a single thing from it, and I vowed to reread it to actually learn and apply the concepts within. But instead of just jumping back into the book, I went online to research how we learn from books. I took what I learned there, adapted it to learning from poker strategy books, and put it to use in my second reading of The Mental Game of Poker. It took quite a bit longer, 2 full weeks, as opposed to just 3 days or so, but I got an unbelievable wealth of useful information from it, and I still use that knowledge daily. So I want to give you the strategy I developed from my own research. It's a 7-step process that pulls the most beneficial information from each chapter and helps you utilize it in your game on a daily basis. So here are the 7 steps.
Number 1.
Skim. Skimming means you're only looking for the main ideas of a text, for keywords and important details that stick out to you. The goal isn't to read everything, but to internalize the major concepts we're about to apply to our game. If you have access to a summary of the book, go ahead and read it. Skim over the chapter itself. Note the layout, headings, any graphs or pictures used. If you spot something really interesting, go ahead and read about it right then. Why wait if you think that this is going to pertain to your game right now and you're eager to read it? In most books also, there's extra quote-unquote fluff added by the author. Ignore this stuff and look for the real value in the chapter.
Number 2.
Set a goal. Now that you have a basic understanding of the chapter by skimming it, the most productive and effective way to read is to know the questions you want answered beforehand. Learning more about the answers to the following 3 questions is your goal. Question number 1 is, what skills can I learn from this chapter? Question 2 is, why are they important or relevant to my game? And question 3 is, how can I implement them in my game? The answers to these 3 questions is your goal when you sit down to read it.
Number 3.
Read. Now that you know your goal, you know what you want to gain from the chapter, it's time to read. Read with a pen and take notes in the margins of the book as necessary. If something's important, mark it so you can find it easier in the future. Quiz yourself on any chapter summaries present and recite as much information about the chapter as you can. And one of the interesting things, my books, when I finish reading them, you'll see them on my shelf. The spines are cracked, the pages are bent, I have writing all over them. It looks like nobody would ever buy this book used from me because it would just be too difficult for them to read and kind of ignore my notes. So that's what my books look like once I get through chapter by chapter.
Number 4.
Summarize and analyze. After reading, it's time to summarize as necessary all of the important points that you want to take with you. You can do this in a notebook, a Word document, a mind map, or Evernote as well. Depending on the book, most of the time I use a Word document, but occasionally I'll use a mind map. I'm not into Evernote, but I know a lot of people use Evernote. I just haven't got into it myself, you know. And next, after you do the summarizing, you want to analyze the info learned. So what I want you to do is open your poker tracking software and filter for relevant hands to analyze or, relevant situations. I want you to use programs like Flopzilla, Equilab, PokerStove, whatever the case is, to test how effective these strategies can be. For example, with the first skill in Ed Miller's book, The Course, he gives opening ranges by position for cash games pre-flop. You can pit these ranges, what he recommends you play, for example, in the early position cutoff button, whatever percentage he recommends, you can pit these ranges against your own current ranges in Equilab to see how equities shake out and how much better his ranges are versus yours. And analyzing what you've read will further help to ingrain it in your head. Getting your hands dirty and putting things to the test will more likely keep the information fresh and available for you to use. But I do want to give you one important caveat. Don't take what you read in any strategy books as gospel. Information can become outdated, strategies can become overused, and sometimes authors can be outright wrong. Test everything to make sure it holds up under scrutiny.
Number 5.
Take action. Now for the most important part, taking action on what you've learned. Use focus sessions, which we discussed in episode number 8. Use focus sessions where you play only 1 to 2 tables and work on adding 1 skill at a time to your arsenal. You're looking for spots to use your newfound knowledge or to practice your poker plays. Keep your summary in front of you to refer back to quickly, or even have the chapter open in front of you. Your goal in this session is to put to the test the skills you're trying to adopt into your game. Look to put yourself into as many spots as possible to test what you've learned and to make the best decisions possible. Do this for at least 1 hour. Make sure to mark the relevant hands as you play, as this will help in the assessment during tomorrow's hand history review.
Number 6.
Assessment. This step is a hand history review of the entire focus session played the night before, with particular emphasis on any hands that you marked. But remember that you're looking at the session as a whole, and not just the marked hands, because you weren't really playing in a vacuum, and what happened on one hand could have affected the way you played or even the way other people played. Use the proper tools like poker tracking software, analysis software, calculator, pen and pencil, Excel spreadsheets, whatever you got to do. Use all of those different tools to determine if you made good plays and killer decisions. Also, always seek out opinions from your peers through submitting hand histories and questions to poker forums, study groups, or your poker coach. If the opinions you receive from players whose games you respect all come back similar to yours, then great! If everyone is telling you that you're doing something wrong, it's more than likely time to go back to the drawing board, reanalyze, and determine if this play or these strategies are really something you want to adopt into your game. And remember, always in poker, sample size is super important. One session with your new skills may not be enough to determine how effective they are. You don't want to mistake short-term results for long-term expected success. This is how leaks are born, so spend a few more sessions, as much time as necessary, using and refining your newly acquired skills before you decide to fully adopt them into your game. Take notes on what worked and what didn't, what you learned or questions you may have, and things to follow up on for more study. Make changes to your summary based on any relevant info that you learned from these assessments.
Number 7.
Rinse, repeat, review. Now that you've made an initial assessment, it's time to take action again in a focus session with your new findings and then assess again afterwards. Do this as many times as necessary until you feel you've got a great grasp on the skill or strategy, whatever it is you're studying, then move on to the next chapter in the book. So, to review these 7 steps we just talked about, number 1 was skim, number 2 was set a goal, number 3, read, number 4, summarize and analyze. Step 5 was take action, the most important part here. Step 6 is assessment. And step 7 was rinse, repeat, review. By following these steps, each chapter may take upwards of 1 to 3 hours to read, and then 2 or more sessions, poker playing sessions, to implement the skills learned. That may seem like an overly long time to take on a chapter, but we are reading this to get the most out of it, not simply to mark another notch on our read that belt. I hope this helps you get more out of the books you read. Challenge! Here's my challenge to you for this episode. Download the 7 Steps to Poker Book Learning PDF from the show notes and use it for one chapter of the current poker book you're reading. Commit to doing each step for the one chapter and see how effective this learning strategy is. I guarantee you'll find it super effective and you'll use it for every chapter from here on. Now it's your turn to take action and do something positive for your poker game.
Oh, that's it now. Get out there and be somebody. Go write a book.
So to recap the episode, I broke down the 7 steps to getting the most from poker books, then gave you a great challenge to put what I said to the test. Let me know how it works for you. And now it's time for me to let you know which book I'll be covering over the next 10 full episodes. You heard that right, 10 full episodes devoted to one book. And that one book is, drumroll please, The Course by Ed Miller. Yes, you heard that right. The course has 10 skills that he breaks down over 10 chapters, and we'll cover these chapters in the next 10 episodes. Now, I know what you're saying. Sky, that's pretty dicked of you, breaking down all of the course. If you do that, nobody'll buy it. Ed Miller's gonna hate you. Yes, I'm sure he would if I actually did that, but I ain't going that far. I'm going to break down one specific part of each chapter. For example, Skill 1 is play a simple and effective pre-flop strategy. That's the name of the chapter. And in it, he talks about the general approach, pre-flop, suited cards, big cards, pocket pairs, connectedness, and the frequencies we should play from each position. If I tried to talk about all of that, then I'd have a frickin' 2-hour podcast. Well, screw that. And plus, of course, it's not fair to Ed Miller. What I'm going to do for this first chapter is discuss just the cutoff frequency he recommends. That's it, just one tiny part. I'll talk about analyzing it, finding your own cutoff frequency, and comparing it to what he recommends. Then I'll discuss how to put his frequency into your game. It's just a tiny part of the chapter, and I'm sure Ed Miller won't mind at all. And in fact, I expect he'll like it because it'll be like a 10-episode plug for his book. Alrighty, so please go to the show notes at smartpokerstudy.com/21 for everything mentioned here, the 7 Steps PDF, and while you're there, also sign up for the smartpokerstudy.com newsletter, and for doing that, I'll send you my ultimate poker resource guide for free. Thank you so much for listening today. Send me your constructive feedback through the show notes page. You can also send an email to sky@smartpokerstudy.com, tweet me at smartpokerstudy, or post in the Facebook group at smartpokerstudy.com/discuss. And I need your questions for the Friday episodes. Please send them to me through all the channels just mentioned. And I want to hear your ideas for podcast topics you'd like me to discuss. Okay, I've got a little feedback email I'd like to read to you from LTU Maximus. He gave me some feedback about the game tape episode number 11. He says, "Hello, Sky. First time I've ever tried to record my game as you suggested in podcast 11. I'm playing poker on my iMac and doing studies more on my laptop because I can study while traveling. For capture on my iMac screen, I've used QuickTime, and there you can find in the File menu, Record New Screen. It was a little bit laggy, but for a 45-minute recording, I kept playing 6 tables, and it was really cool. My first thoughts when I watched the video was that my voice, oh my gosh, I can't listen to myself. But it's not about the voice, it's all about the poker and the decisions. I want to let you know how my game and decisions were affected during the recording. As I played, I felt like my teacher was watching how I was playing. And you know how it is. You always want to perform better or at your best when your teacher or coach is watching. And the second thing he said was, I made very good folds pre-flop, twice with ace-king and once with queen-queen. I probably wouldn't have folded those hands days before, so I've saved myself probably 3 buy-ins. Number 3 thing he said was, I found that I'm too passive post-flop and I'm really struggling with value hands, missing some value and not betting, and showdown hands, betting when I really shouldn't, when it's better to just check back instead of getting check raised and calling just to lose the pot. Thank you very much for what you're doing. Best regards, LTU Maximus. Well, thank you very much, LTU Maximus, for sending that email in. I really appreciate the feedback on that game tape. I hope you keep using it, and I hope the listeners do as well. I get a ton out of it, and I'm sure, just like you said, you do, so keep it up. Alrighty, poker people, be sure to come back for tomorrow's episode number 22, where I discuss skill number 1 in the course, which is play a simple and effective pre-flop strategy. Word of mouth is the best advertising, and a recommendation from you to your friends would be most appreciated. If you enjoyed our time together and learned a little something, please share it with a homie. Until next time, study smart, play much, and make your next session the best one yet.